Okay.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to Navajo Tea Time.
Adrian here.
Kelsey.
Kelsey.
We're good at the introduction.
I know. Sorry, everyone. Everything we do is unscripted.
I'm always just like, I'm Kelsey. Sometimes I don't even say my name. It's like, hi, it's Navajo Tea Time. He's like, who are you?
But I think to answer your question, who are you? So let's do a really quick intro, and then and then a quick update, and then we'll jump into our first topic.
Do we want to do a Navajo introduction?
Sure.
Okay, Yat Esh A Kelsey Lee Yanisha Sitna Janine Ishle Said Excuse me Bashishin German Dasha Che Kia Ani Dasha Nelle. My name is Kelsey Lee. I am a filmmaker. I'm a part owner of Happy Accidents Media Production and a co-host to Navajo Tea Time.
Awesome. My name is Adrian Lerma. Nakaidina Anishle Nash Aja Tabahan Bashishin Techini Dashanella Klusatlana Dashache. I was born and raised in Tuba City, Arizona. I currently live and work on the Navajo Nation with my family, and I like to say that I am a mother, Dinette Asa, a small business owner, an agitator, an aspiring academic, and I think that's what I have on my bio on social media. So if you happen to find me there, you'll see that. But yeah, multiple things that I'm engaged in. That's who I am, and that's how I identify. My pronouns are... Just kidding.
Alright, so this topic that we're going to talk about is something we didn't get to last time because, honestly, talking about bullet journaling took up all the time, took up all the battery. I think you can feel at the end of our filming series, we're rushing through the topics because the batteries were dying.
Like, okay, we gotta go, bye! With like all of our stickers and everything around. That was fun.
So the topic we're talking about is Indigenous parenting, and Adrian quickly mentioned it at the end of the episode, the last official episode, I guess, with Mother's Day. So we'll get into the topic.
Okay, so the question is, what does that look like in your household? So I guess I'll go first. When it comes to, Indigenous or indigenized parenting, I think some people might say, what does that mean, right? And so what it means to me is incorporating language and cultural aspects into parenting models, but also trying to align the way you teach and raise your children with what is aligned with your tribe or your culture, right? So there are certain things that I do not subscribe to that maybe parenting books that you find at the bookstore might not have, or YouTubers might be like, try this, try that, or even you can go to parenting classes too, like in the city. Sometimes they offer them. Remember that group called, was it Parenting Arizona or First Things First and WIC? Sometimes they offer parenting classes, and you can go to parenting classes, and oftentimes they'll give you suggestions that might not align with your own tribe's values. For example, I remember you mentioned co-sleeping.
Oh, yeah.
And doctors would be like, that's not safe. And you're like, first of all. And so, like, for me, it was two things that really stood out. I raised my children in cradle boards. And to some people, that, your baby's basically strapped in by leather where it can't move. And it teaches children various things, there's various values that go into that, but it's also, it's not only for their own protection and for security for the child, but it teaches them, like, kind of like how to
be still,
how to self-soothe, how to kind of, listen, I think, because I would have my child with me, and I've seen other babies that are just like having a fit, and their parents are trying to console them, and they're trying to like hold them and nurture them, and the child gets accustomed to that, so they realize that they can behave certain ways to get a specific outcome. With the cradle board, that's completely like, no, you know what I mean? You're in the cradle board, you're going to sleep, you're going to relax, you're going to watch, you're going to pay attention. I'm going to work, you know what I mean? I'm going to clean, I'm going to do what I need to do. While your child is safe and secure with you, right? And oftentimes the cradle board is when the baby's still a newborn, so it's not like a toddler, strapped up. I know, it's not like that. But, like, I use the cradle board, and with the cradle board, there's different teachings that are attached to that. You know, like, there's significance for every piece, like the rainbow, the straps. Every piece of that board, of that cradle board, has a specific meaning and teaching tied to it, and the responsibilities of the parents, right, to teach that. So, for that reason, that's kind of in alignment with what I've done. The other thing is snow baths. So I always give my kids snow baths. They've always had them since they were born. So I remember living at NAU and people, like other parents, pretty shocked. And some people even kind of like, you could tell they didn't approve that I was dunking my kids in the snow, like washing them down. And they're like, they're crying. And these parents are just like, what the heck is she doing, And then I run out there, like in either underwear or bathing suit. I'm like rolling in the snow, like, getting it all over me, getting my snow bath too. And they're just like, wow, that family's weird. But, so I think it's like incorporating those things into the way you raise your kids and the teachings that you teach them, and then also the rules that you set that are in alignment with culture. So I guess that's what it looks like in my household. What does it look like in yours?
With mine, it's a mishmash hodgepodge of everything, because like I mentioned before, my husband's half Hopi and then half of Oklahoma tribes, but because he's Omaha, Ponca, and Choctaw on his mom's side.
Wow.
And then his dad's side's Hopi, and then me, part Navajo and part German, and I feel like a little bit of each of those cultures get mixed into our household. Like, it's kind of hard to pinpoint to some things, but I feel like baking, we do a lot of baking in our household, especially around Christmas time. We have, like, the special Christmas cookie that we always make.
Oh, yeah. It's really good.
And then there's, I don't know, it's hard to say what's indigenous and what's just,
Yeah.
normal.
I know, right? That's the thing too, is like what's normal in your house in an indigenous home is basically, you could always categorize that. But I think sometimes there's stereotypes that also, I think some people apply, like, oh, like indigenous people, what are some that I've heard? Like, indigenous people, like, just yell at their kids, or, you know what I mean? Indigenous people don't coddle their kids when they fall over, they just laugh at them.
Yeah, so, like, that's one thing I do with Frankie. Like, like, if she's not crying and she just falls, we go, like, touchdown, I don't play sports, but we go touchdown and everything. And then when you were saying, like, how parents come and coddle their kids and cuddle them and when they're throwing a fit or whatever, I laughed because I lift her upside down. So when she's throwing a fit when she was really young, I would just pick her up and I put her upside down. And then she'd just start laughing.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you want to just turn you upside down. There was no reason. It was just, I figured it's better than spanking her.
Yeah.
Especially when, like, she's trying to, like, move and fight you and everything. You just hold her upside down. And she's like, what's going on? Why am I upside down? What's going on? And then it, like, kind of puts a stop to her tantrum for a moment and make her realize something's different and just kind of stops her brain.
Yeah, I think there's a big thing too, like about, like, in relation to discipline, how indigenous people discipline as opposed to maybe other cultures. Because I know for sure that, like, some cultures are all about the spanking. And I know, at least in my household, I do other things, like, when my daughter used to have really bad fits, I would put her in the shower and run cold water. Not for a long time, but just to kind of shock her into being awake, you know what I mean? Or I would splash her with cold water and she would calm down. I'm like, you need to chill, and I'd have her, like, chill out, But my mom one time saw me do that, and she's like, don't do that, that's mean. And I'm just like, first of all.
You whipped me.
I know, like, you whipped me. You used various things to whip me. This is better than that. I'm not hitting her, I'm not hurting her. But yeah, so there's that. And then I think sometimes people, like as kids get older, there's other ways that you can discipline your kids. I think some people are like, take away, I know that some of the things I've seen are like taking away phone privileges, taking away tech, taking away the Wi-Fi password. So basically just like losing certain privileges if the child steps out of line.
Mm-hmm.
In my household, I do that, but what I also do when the kids like for example, at the end of the semester, my kids were like stressing me out really bad. I swear to God, every single one of them except my daughter Alex, they were not doing good in school. It was almost like spring fever just hit them really hard, and they weren't even trying. And they're just like, whatever, the school year's almost over. And I'm like, first of all, we finished this race. It's not over until it's over. You know, it's the last freaking day. And they're like, kind of just being relaxed about it. And then I was getting calls from teachers, and they were like, you know, they need to work on A, B, and C. Otherwise, they're either going to fail or their grades are going to be super low. So I had to get on them. And I remember after a call with a teacher, I was like fuming, right? And some parents would yell at their kids, some parents would whip their kids, some parents would beat their kids, some parents would, you know, do other things. Well, I was like, get in the household, get some water, and they were like, what's going on, you know? And I had them all drink water, and I ran them. I told them they had to do 10 laps around. Yeah, I was like, 10 laps, go, don't come back in here until you're done. And they were like, why? And I was like, because your grades are awful. You're not even trying. Get out there. I'm like, if you need to learn discipline, self-discipline, self-control, self-motivation, you're going to learn it today, because if you can't do it for yourself, this is how I'm going to motivate you. And I ran them, and they were running. After like around like 5-7 laps, they were like one of them like threw up his water. One of them was on the verge of tears. She's like, this hurts. And I was like, keep going. And I didn't let them stop until they finished their 10 laps. They came back inside, and they were like, that was awful. And I'm like, well, if you want to do this every single day, you can keep slacking off. If you want to do your homework and act right in school, then you won't have to do this every day. And they were like, oh, okay. So guess what?
But they chose to do that every day.
But they didn't. I would run them. I would run them. And so they didn't. Guess what? So my daughter got the honor roll. And my son passed with A's and B's, right? I even ran the little one. Poor thing. Because he was having fits. And I made him run. And he thought it was fun until about the 4th lap. And he was like, I'm tired. I'm like, okay. You're just a little one. It's okay. But he was all running with them. It was so cute. But yeah, so that's what happened. But so I do things like that. You know what I mean? I'm just like, we have a running culture. May as well utilize it, right? Elements of that. And yeah, it was pretty punishing, but it taught them a lesson. And now they don't mess with me either, because they're just like, oh, she's serious, you know? And that's, yeah. You're all, that's torture.
Well, for me, I hate running, you know.
know.
I told you, I'd fight the serial killer. I ain't running.
I know. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I can be really tough like that. I think Indigenous parenting is being tough on your kids, because I don't see a lot of Native parents, especially Navajo parents, letting their kids like talk trash to them. Like I see like Biliganas like getting cursed at by their kids, having their kids cuss in the house, call them by their first names, you know, things like that. Or like the parents are like trying to act like their friend. And at least for me, I'll just speak for me, that doesn't fly in my house, because that's not in alignment with our culture. There's, you know, F-based relationships, and there's the way you speak to people and address people. It really shows your level of respect, but also your teachings. And so I never let my kids call me by my first name. I never let my kids talk back to me, and I don't let them swear in the house at all. And if they do, they get punished. So if they were ever to do that to me and talk to me like that, I mean, there would be hell to pay, for sure. And so that's probably something that differentiates me from other people. But how about you?
I mean, like, I don't know, like, most of the things Frankie says, I find adorable and cute and funny.
Well, she's little, she's cute, she's young, and my kids are like, you know,
but like
they
still,
range...
you know, like when she starts throwing a fit and she starts getting really mad, she says mean things. She'll be like, "I hate you, mommy," blah blah blah. But like, I'll just be like, "Well, I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it." And like I say in like a really mean way. So like, she'll be like, "I hate you, mom." I'm like, "Well, I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it." You know,
girl, weaponizing the word love.
Like, so that's why, like, you know, she like because she's, you know, she's 5, and when she starts getting that way, I know it's like it's the end of the day, and it's probably it's usually comes when we've been doing something really taxing on her emotions, and like maybe like we were doing a lot of schoolwork that day, or like something really changed in our schedule, and it was just really, really disconcerting to her, and then she's just like, "I'm done with the day, and I hate you all," blah blah blah, you know, and yeah, and I know, like, around the house, I'll randomly yell, "I love you," in, like, different ways. I'm like, "I love you!" to her all the time. And then I was talking to my mom, and she was like, Frankie came over to me the other day, and she's like, "I love you, Grandma!" in, like, this really mean way. So I said it back to her. I'm like, yeah.
Oh, she got that from me.
So I feel like in my household, me and Gernon, there's a lot of things we do that are different than the way we were raised, just because we're different than the people who raised us.
Yeah, for sure.
Because, like, my mom, she's, like, ADHD, and she's super positive.
You're super positive?
She always has a positive spin or outlook, or she's like, "Oh, what if this wonderful thing happens?" And I think for me, because my mom was always in the clouds and always thinking of like the best case scenario, I'm like, "Wait, Mom, what's the worst case scenario?" Because I have to write down what we're gonna do in case it fails.
Yeah.
And so that's always been me and my mom's dynamics, where she'd think of like the best thing possible, and I'd be like, "What's the worst thing possible?" And I don't know, with Frankie, it just feels different than how I used to like raise my younger siblings or like interact with my younger siblings, because I have more control on how I can raise her in a way.
Yeah, I think like Indigenous parenting is an interesting topic. I actually did I did a talk one time during this. It was like, I think it was like a woman warriors conference, and I did this talk on, I think it was like a subtopic of Indigenous parenting. I think it was like, I forgot the specific title, but it was around that topic, and I remember talking about the relationship between man and woman, and how, and it was also talking about how we oftentimes assign so it was about like the relationship between male female energies, right, in alignment with our understanding of, I guess, the Net Bahanet, and, you know, like the sky and the earth, you know, Father Sky, Mother Earth, the energies in that within us, but also talking about the gender binary, how oftentimes we apply, you know, blue for boys, pink for girls, and how we kind of assign these gender roles and these identities on children that are not inherently the way we understand the world, or the way we're taught to understand the world, or at least the way our ancestors understood the world. And it becomes the norm. And therefore it affects how the child grows up to be and how they find themselves navigating through the world. So it kind of went into all of that. And so when it comes to like Indigenous parenting, I think it's just, the best way I can define it is just trying, you know, aligning our parenting methods and disciplines with how, I guess, our ancestors or how our creation stories teach us to raise children, which is basically, you have to have this balance where you have like Hajonja teachings, which are like, you know, balance and beauty and laughter and like all these different things, you know, like cleanliness and health and wellness and joy and gratitude, right? And then there's the Hashkeja side, where it's like you have to really have discipline, and you have to have like protection around yourself, and you have to, you know, be willing to take harsh criticism and not fall apart and break apart, right? It's really about being strong inside in body, mind, and spirit. And so if you're trying to teach along those like two ways, there's many actions that you have to employ to get to hit every single one of those, right? Like responsibility for yourself, but also your family and your clan and your community and your nation. It's like so big and broad. And then also thinking ahead to people who are going to come after you. So creating something within your life that you can pass on, whether it's knowledge or, you know, whatever, right? There's so many things that you can pass on to people behind you. So it's really this big concept. And so, and that's just Diné. That's just Diné thinking. So, so having to pair that with other cultures, other indigenous cultures, so that they're compatible, I think that's super challenging. But I think there's a lot in all the different cultures where you can really pull a lot of really cool, knowledge and a lot of cool practices. Like, this is probably off topic, but in regard to your German heritage, my son and I were talking about, he was asking me, he was like, do you think that the Nazis would accept the KKK? Which is like kind of a crazy topic, right? But he was like genuinely curious. And I was like, I just wanted to kind of bring that up because it was a conversation that my son and I were having, and it was kind of like slightly related to what we're thinking about or talking about. But I felt like, you know, that's kind of a thing too that happens within our household as far as having these, you know, these conversations and trying to think critically about them and what is, you know, I feel like that's what it's like when you're trying to raise your kids up in the kind of setting that I'm trying to create, where you're trying to get them to think, you know, think more often, think more, think on their own, as opposed to just pulling information from what's around them and just naming it a fact. You know, like, this is real, I saw it on the internet, it's real. And I'm like, no. You know, like, I grew up in a world where if you saw it on the internet, you really need to question it. You know, it's not valid. There's no guarantee that this has been researched or proven to be true. So anyways, but I think that's something about the culture, is just that you kind of get that when you're in ceremony, when you're in like a sweat lodge, for example, or you're in a grace period after a ceremony where you're really challenged to think deeper, think thoroughly, and just really be cautious about how you move forward every day. Every action has a ripple effect, and every thought has a ripple effect. So I think that's kind of how, I've indigenized my parenting, you know what I mean? Like, just being cognizant of that and trying to pass on that method to the kids, which is so hard when they're like middle school, high school age, you know what I mean? Because I think every parent knows how challenging that can be. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think one thing I try to do is, like, I try to involve Frankie in the different, on her dad's side. Like, one thing I've noticed is Hopi is very commutative. Like, all of their ceremonies, all their dances and everything, they invite everybody. The whole village. Like, I've never seen that here. Yeah. Like, with, like, I guess the Yebiches and dances, like, I've only heard them in passing. I've never been like, oh yes, everyone come, everyone go, we're all getting together, we're all working, like, and then when I was, like, dating Gernin and his family, I saw, like, the whole family gets together, everyone participates, everyone helps cook, and everyone's involved, and I feel like that's the way they've been able to keep their culture really strong, is, like, you don't feel isolated. Like, me here in Cameron, I'm like, well, I don't know anything about the culture. There's no one around. There's nothing I can go. There's no one to visit to talk about it. And so we take her to these dances, and she, like, I try to I let Gernin teach her the different terms and things, and so we try to, because one thing, like, you were talking about with, like, Ka and, like, how you address people. Yeah. So with Gernin's family, like, we teach her the Hopi names for them. Yeah. So she learns those, but then also we teach her the Navajo names for my family. Yeah. So, like, she has her Che, but then she also has her Guas, and then she has her Masana and her Nali, and then she also has her So'os. Yeah. And then, like, Gernin's sister, or Gernin's sisters, you know, she calls them by their Hopi addresses. So we were trying, like, okay, these are your Hopi family, and then your Navajo family. So that's one thing we've been trying to do. And, you know, just incorporate it with her.
I feel like I need to do that more with, like, like Bahi's grandma, I never say like abuela, or you know what I mean, because even though she speaks some Spanish, she doesn't like the household's mostly like speaking English. You know what I mean? And I know that I don't know, so I just call her grandma. You know, but that's how I'm teaching him. But with his like with my mom and dad, you know, they're Masena, they're Che, Shamasena, Shache. You know what I mean? So I don't use that word out of respect for him.
So
but
maybe you could learn his
I know.
cultures.
Purépecha is hard. I think. Oh, all languages are hard for me. So
that's just kind of like some things and ways we incorporate indigenized parenting styles and like different, I guess, traditions and customs into our household. And it's kind of hard to pick apart like what's indigenous, what's not. Because sometimes it's like, oh yeah, we've always done it this way, but you don't know it's different unless you experience something different.
Yeah, and sometimes people can model toxic behaviors not knowing that that's actually super toxic and bad. So I think that's another thing to think about. But yeah, like, oh, we've always done this, but it's like, yeah, but is that why?
That's right.
Is that right? Is that okay? You know, I feel like it's not okay. Just kidding. No, but yeah, maybe like in the comments below, you guys can share with us how you guys are exhibiting indigenous parenting in your household, and then I think we can do a follow-up on this kind of every year. That's what we're gonna do with our next topic. So check out our next video. All right, bye.